All right, so everybody, we've just finished our last session, which was on how to get through a security check when applying for the government of Canada. And we're going to start the real deal on international experiences real shortly. I'm going to delay putting the PowerPoint on my screen as long as possible. Just because once I do, I can't see anything, and it's going to kind of ruin. It's going to ruin the vibe a little bit for me. Hi everybody. My name is Colin Malone. I work for International Experience Canada, and today I will be the boring public servant on the line. But luckily, I brought some friends. Maggie, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. My name is Maggie Darling. So I am a youth ambassador for IEC, and I got this position shortly after returning from Scotland, where I did my IEC visa, I guess. And in my other role, I'm in communications and marketing. So I work at United Way in Northumberland, and I'm their director of communications and engagement. So while I was in Scotland, I worked in a similar role and did a bunch of traveling around Europe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caleb Pierce. I also am a youth ambassador for IEC. I did almost 2 years on my working holiday visa in the UK. And then about 5 years after that, I did another 6 months, a second visa in Japan. And now currently I'm living in Banff, and through my entire experience living abroad and traveling, it really changed my whole perspective on everything and drove my passion for tourism in general. And so that's part of why I live in Banff now.
Oh, that's great. And you know what? I'm just not going to put the PowerPoint up until later so that you guys can see. I'll show you the map later, but other than that, I think we're just going to go on just this conversation, but we'll use the outline as a guide. So usually at this point, I would start talking about why people go on international work experiences as part of their gap year, because there are actual unique benefits to it. And I start presenting a lot of boring research. Like one thing that we know that's been coming out in the more recently is that there's a lot of academic benefits for those who have gone on international work experiences in the past. So out of the UK, we see that students in university who worked or studied abroad during or before their education end up having like an A- or higher average, and that's higher than their peers who haven't had those experiences. So I'm wondering if either of you, did you guys go back to school after your time, or was school already done before you by the time you went abroad?
So I can jump in here actually. So I finished my schooling before I went, but I actually am about to start my master's now.
Oh, nice.
So I start actually next month. And that was one of the big things that when I applied, I talked about my experience abroad. And that was one of the things when I interviewed, they were most intrigued about and kind of asked me about it. And then what led me back and how I learned what I was doing abroad and then made me want to continue school after that. So yes, definitely. I think it made me stand out among candidates for sure.
Oh, that's really cool. Do you think it helped in some ways to know what you wanted in your master's to kind of like confirm things for you a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. So I worked at United Way prior to leaving for Scotland, and then I thought I didn't want to work in nonprofits anymore. I thought I wanted to do more corporate side. So when I got over there, I worked in a position in corporate, and I worked in a position in the government. And then it kind of solidified that, no, I belong in nonprofit, and I love what I do there. So, yeah, I learned that way.
And how about you, Caleb?
So for me, my experiences, I I had a lot of pressure on me pretty young to do well and get an education and everything, but I was quite personally driven to getting into the trades. And so I got into a program in high school that kind of gave me a head start 1 year in. So I was already into my second year of my program coming straight out of high school. And I had always had an interest and a desire to travel, but I had no knowledge of the IEC program whatsoever at the time. And I finished my apprenticeship, became a journeyman, and I still wasn't finding full satisfaction. And I still had this lingering desire to see the world, and especially dig into my family roots in the UK. And so that was a big driver in why I wanted to do it. And so I just went traveling. And then, so when I came home, like I said before, it definitely changed who I was as a person for the better. I learned a lot more about the world and myself, what was important to me. And so I actually never went back to what I had worked so hard for and my education, because just I had changed. That wasn't important to me anymore. And so, but I will say I did end up getting a job with a pretty awesome tour company as a tour guide without actual education related to tourism, based specifically just on my personal experiences. So it's like I got a sort of a life education that was relevant to me getting a job down the road.
Yeah, it fed in, like your experiences while you were abroad kind of fed into being able to do that much more like tourism centric work upon return. That's awesome.
Definitely. I fell in love with the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is like one thing that, you know, to go back to some of the research that they do say is that like a lot of this stuff does turn people into kind of global citizens. They know more about the economy, social issues, the political structure, and things like that of the destination country that they go to. But like that interest and knowledge like continues way beyond just the time that they were there. It sticks with them, and they have a greater understanding of the kind of the complexity of how everything's kind of interconnected in the world.
Definitely.
So that's one real interesting thing that comes out of the research. But also there's a lot of stuff that talks about resilience and having a lot more confidence. What kind of skills and stuff do you think that you developed, kind of like the softer skills while you were abroad?
Maggie?
Do you want to go ahead on this one?
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. So definitely for me, something that developed over time, the longer I was away from home, the constant social pressure, if you will, or even within your personal life, your family and friends and expectation. When you're off living in another country, you really have to rely on yourself, and you get a lot more time with yourself to learn what's important on your terms and on no one else's terms at all. And that's where I found a lot of personal growth, definitely, into what I like to hope, being a much better person and much more engaged, and actually appreciating different perspectives, even things that I wouldn't, because a different culture looks at things in a different way. Being immersed in a different culture was so beneficial in ways that I never expected.
And like, what kind of ways do you think? Like, what weren't you expecting? What did you get?
How things are valued, I say, I think is probably the best way to put it. Is and more specifically, I took a lot of things for granted at home. Going to another place and seeing how certain things in my life were just so easy that I never even thought about that. I would have never have considered that had I not actually lived in another country. And you don't get that full experience just traveling in another country. Once you live there and have to deal with the nuances of getting insurance and whatever tax structure you have to accommodate in, and getting a bank account. These are challenging things in life in general, but doing it in a foreign country where you don't have a support structure really makes you a more independent and strong person in life. I'm a big believer in it.
Awesome. And how about you, Maggie?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Caleb's saying. I also think too, even though I went to the UK also, so it's not a complete culture shock as far as Canada to the UK, but you still, for the first time in my life, I kind of felt like a little bit of an outsider. And it's a humbling experience that kind of makes you more aware and more conscious of when you come back to Canada, and then also when you're in another country, of being respectful of other people's opinions and beliefs. And yeah, it taught me just, sometimes you get into certain situations where you think this is the worst case scenario, but you always find a way through it. And it's just really, now I look at my life, and if I'm in a position where I'm like, okay, this is terrible, it's really not, and you're going to get through it, and you have that sense of resiliency that you will always find a way through it, as terrible as it seems at the time. So yeah, you just have that belief in yourself and belief in that things will work out one way or the other, and then you always learn something through it.
Oh, that's awesome. And then, like, the last real benefit chunk that I usually talk about in these presentations is that we see that people who've had these kind of international experiences often have like better employment outcomes than their peers down the line. I could like roll off a bunch of stats and just say exactly all these dollar amounts and stuff. But on average, it's about like 13% higher in some of the studies, it says. That they're making than their peers who didn't go abroad. And so I'm just kind of wondering, for you guys, like the employment situation upon your return, and like, how do you think your experiences abroad fed into it or not? And I'm looking for the good, bad, and the ugly on this as well. So Maggie, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Okay, so I worked at United Way before I left. And I am back at United Way now. But I was offered my job back with a promotion when I returned. So I think that is a great incentive right there. And then since I've returned, I've received 2 additional promotions in that time. I'd like to think it's also because of my work, but at the same time, I think it's because of what I learned abroad as well. So I think definitely I can see how that, just a different perspective, brings something new to whatever organization you return to, whether it's somewhere you've worked in the past or somewhere that's completely new.
How about you, Caleb?
So for me, when I came home, as I said, my priorities had shifted quite a lot. And before I actually did my visa, I was general manager of a $1 million business. It was quite a good job. Everyone thought I was pretty nuts to want to go leave that away, but I wanted more, and I wanted life experience. So I still hold that it's the best decision I ever made in my entire life, giving that up and living in another country. But when I came home, I was looking for a completely new field of work, definitely. So I did get my job offered back to me at an increased rate with bonuses and stuff, but I had made the decision that I didn't want to go back into that industry. And ever since I've come home from that experience, regardless of where I work, I never seek it or go for it. But I think because my personality and skills have grown through life experience, without me trying, I'm always ending up in management or supervisor positions every single time, because I think I have a lot to offer to the table, a lot of good life experience and skills that definitely grew through my experiences abroad, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the communication skills that you get on these kind of like intercultural experiences, like you can't really replace those experiences to be able to get those specific skills, like the sensitivity of like understanding how to navigate different perspectives. You only develop it by like tripping over yourself a bunch of times, and like that's 100% you gain. Those kinds of skills are like, those are management skills, right?
Also, it's living in another country that it's an incredible experience, but there's going to be challenges. And it definitely, anyone who does this, their problem solving skills are going to be way better when they come home, for sure, without a doubt. And when there's an obstacle, Maggie, you kind of touched on this. When there's an obstacle, when you're abroad, you have to deal with it. There's no one really to help you, because everyone you know and love and care about is back home on the other side of the world. So you just have to deal with it. So I think that's very beneficial as life goes on, because there are going to be challenges in life and difficult situations that no one wants to deal with. But if you've done it before, it makes it easier to deal with for the rest of your life, which can make you a stronger, better person.
Definitely. I think some of the people that I know that have lived in another country are some of the most like dedicated and determined people that I know, because they set their mind to something and they're going to achieve it. It might not always be easy, but they're going to continue.
Yeah. Just to do like a kind of hard practical shift in the conversation a little bit, I'm just going to say, like, we've been having this really nice kind of sunny conversation about all the benefits. And even we're doing like, we're getting real at times and being like, well, you know, like it's not always easy. But the reality is, like, while there are a bunch of benefits to being able to go abroad, it can be very complicated to be able to work abroad. Because you're going to need to get a work permit, and traditionally work permits can be really, really complicated, and they can take quite a long time. So I'll just give my favorite example, which is if you were to want to go work and travel in Ireland, if you went through their temporary foreign worker visa, it would cost you €1,000, and you'd need to get an employer to sponsor you to be able to go abroad, and that processing can take quite a long time to happen. But luckily for Canadians, we have International Experience Canada, which is where I work, and these two lovely people use these visas when they traveled around the world. And what's great about these visas is that, if I will just go back to the Irish example, these visas are faster, cheaper, and easier than other ones. So in the Irish example, with the temporary foreign worker visa, I said it was going to be €1,000. With the IEC visa, it costs $150 Canadian. Whereas you needed to have an employer sponsor you for the temporary foreign worker visa. With IEC visas, you don't need an employer to sponsor you before you go, because it's called an open work permit. So you can work for anybody in the country. Now, every country is a little bit different on how they do their thing and on the implementation of this, because we have over 35 partner countries around the world, and these visas are available to Canadians between 18 to 35 for you to be able to travel there for up to 2 years. So what I'll do now is I'll actually share my screen, and I will show
PowerPoint.
you. Oh, there we go. Here we go. I'll show you I'll show you the countries that we have on offer. One moment. Is it working? No, it's not. There we go. One more. Sorry, guys, it's going very slowly. Okay, so these are our countries that IEC has available to us. As you see, there's over 35 of them. They're mostly concentrated in Europe. We've got a few in the Pacific, Asia, and the Americas as well. This map is not up to date. We also have Andorra now, which was just added,
Cool.
which is a small city-state. We've got a bunch of those. Yeah, so these are the places that you could go. And so where did you guys go while you were on there? If you could also just give like a brief kind of explanation to folks about what the application process was like, and maybe highlight some of the differences between the countries that you went to. Maggie,
Sure.
why don't you go first?
Sure. So I went to the UK. So for me, I applied in like October, and I had to complete an online application, and then I had to go to Toronto to do an interview and do my biometric residency permit, fingerprints and that sort of thing. Basically, it's just a background check to make sure that you're able to leave the country and live in another place. So, and then I got my approval back probably the end of November. So it wasn't too long of a period, maybe about 6 weeks. But I've heard some countries can be longer, some countries can be quicker. It all depends. But overall, it was a pretty easy process. And I think it was probably around $800 because you pay $150, I think, for the fee, and then you had to pay for the NHS fee, which is the healthcare in the UK. So, but that covered you for 2 years.
Your healthcare.
Sorry?
That included healthcare?
That included healthcare, yeah. So that was 2 years covered through the NHS.
That's pretty great. That's pretty cheap.
Yeah, definitely.
And how about you, Caleb?
So for me, I also went to the UK, but I was as green as could be about travel. Was definitely on the intimidated side, but it was something I wanted. So I actually paid a third-party company to help me. So they helped do my application, helped guide me through it. And then I had to go to Edmonton to get my biometrics, fingerprints, and they took pictures and all those good things. Provide insurance, travel insurance, of course, and prove that you have enough finances. To me, the simple way that I try to describe it to people is they want to make sure that you're enough of an adult to come live in another country. Mm-hmm. Just a few things. But for me, it was a relatively quick turnaround as well. I think it was about 6 weeks for me. Came back in my passport and I was ready to go. So that was pretty straightforward. Now, fast forward the 5 years when I decided to go to Japan. It's a very different process. Like you said, all the countries have different rules of how they want you to come in and how they want you to apply. They want to make sure that you are someone who is genuinely serious about wanting to do something this big with your life. So with Japan, I had to do similar things again, where you have to fill out the full application, and I had to get a basic medical exam just to prove that I'm healthy and prove that I had travel insurance and finances again. But the more interesting things that I had to do was they asked for a rough 6 month itinerary of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to see. They wanted essentially proof that I actually wanted to see Japan and I wasn't just coming to take someone's job or whatever. And they had me write a 1-page letter, a personalized letter of why I wanted to come live and work in Japan, which I thought was pretty awesome. And then I had to go to the embassy as well in Calgary, and I had a short interview with the person at the embassy as well, which was a bit unexpected, but she helped guide me through it. And actually the staff at the Japanese embassy were super helpful with everything. Whenever I was unsure, they're just like, call me and we'll help you get through this. And it worked out great. Things are very, very official and regulated in Japan, so it makes sense that the visa process is the same. A bit more work, but it got me into the country where every single thing has been taken care of. And it was definitely worth all the work.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, so as you can see, every country is a little bit different. I'll just give the example because most Canadians end up going to Australia. So the Australian system is quite simple. It's an all online process, and they sometimes process the whole thing within a day. It's a pretty well-oiled machine over there. I think New Zealand's quite similar as well. I'm just going to be the downer now and just say that we still are in a pandemic, and so no one here is encouraging you to travel right now. And it is super important that you keep an eye on the travel advisories that are coming out to the government of Canada of where is safe to go. And you're going to want to keep track of what the different COVID regulations in the destination country that you're thinking about going to are as you kind of integrate this into your travel plans. Sorry if this is obvious, but just to make sure, IEC is a program to apply for work internationally. Thank you, Joanna, for the question. So basically IEC is work permits. So we're not going to find your job. They're not going to set you up with a job. It just makes it legal for you to work in the country.
I just want to touch on one thing that Colin said earlier. One of the best parts about IEC is it's an open work permit. So most visas to most countries in the world, whether you're getting a student visa or an internship or something, you are locked into that company or program or school. With IEC, when you get your visa, there's a few very small things that you can't do. Some countries don't want you working in healthcare or education specifically, but for the most part, you have a free pass to live in another country and get a job doing whatever you want in whatever industry, which is the best part about IEC. It's on your terms.
To that point as well, when I went to the UK, I had previously served in Canada. So that was my plan, was to work in a bar or restaurant and serve. But then when I got over there, I also put some of my applications into contract positions for communications and marketing, which was what I went to school for, and ended up getting jobs. So it completely changed my course of my plan, but it ended up working out great.
Oh, that's amazing. And so I'm wondering if anybody else has any questions in the short time that we've got remaining. You can either throw them in the chat, or y'all are welcome to share your video on with us and have a little chat. Yes, I will pull up. Actually, yeah, here, I'll give it to you. It's canada.ca/IEC. So on that website, there's kind of like it'll be a landing page, and you're going to say that you're Canadian looking to go abroad, because it works both ways, because all the youth from our partner countries can come and work in Canada as well. So you choose the Canadian option, and there'll be a drop down menu of all the different countries that are available. And from there you can apply directly, or you can just learn about it. Like, they have really useful information about each country on the website.
And something else that Colin said before too is obviously with the pandemic, it's not the perfect time to do things now, or even regardless, you might be studying or have a lot of things going on in life. Another great part about the IEC program is the door is open until you're 35 years old. You don't have to do it now. You don't have to do it in 2 years, but if life changes and you want to try something new, this open door to the world is there for a long time.
Yeah. And also it takes some time sometimes.
Keep that in mind. Some countries are like 30, some are 35.
Yeah.
I think Australia's like 36 now for some reason.
Cool. And it also takes some time to apply, because like when I started looking into it, it was probably about a year from when I began looking into it and planning for it to actually leaving and going.
Yeah, you need to semi-wrap up your life a little bit and get ready to move abroad. It's not a quick process.
Yeah.
And once you're approved, there's a window anyway. Like, once they've given you a window, you've got a year before you need to enter the country. And your permit only starts once you do enter. But Joanna, I do want to get to your question real quick. Unfortunately, no. The program is not available to permanent residents. It's only to Canadian citizens. But again, it's up till you're 35. So if you do get your citizenship within that window, it will be on offer to you. Or anybody you know. Sorry, Maggie, I cut you off there. I just wanted to get to that question.
No worries. Yeah, it's all good.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure. Does anybody else have any questions? You're welcome, Hardy. Kai, that is an amazing question. Okay, so complicated. Technically, yes, but what we presented today was speaking about basically just the the working holiday visa, which is the open work permit version of IEC. But IEC has different kinds of agreements with different countries. So for certain countries, there will be different streams of the permit that are available to you. So you can only use your working holiday visa once, so for 2 years. But what you could do is go to the same country again using what's called the young professional stream. And the young professional stream is not an open work permit. It's with a specific employer in that country that sponsors you. So maybe what you want to do is you go for your 2-year open work permit through the working holiday visa, and then meet employers while you're there, and then get them to sponsor you for your second go around of 4 years. And then, at that point, you're going to be pretty well accustomed to the immigration system of whichever country you've been dealing with, and you'll be able to bounce around. We know, like within Canada, a lot of French youth from France. If I go to an event, when we used to do these events in person, we go places, and French youth would come to me and they would ask me insanely detailed questions about when the program was opening up different pools for different things, and I was like, you know more about how this program works than I do. And that's just because they're like, there's a culture of bouncing from permit to permit within Canada from French youth. So Kai, I super encourage you to do the same as a Canadian in another country. My pleasure. Awesome. Well, I don't want to keep y'all from the cafe thing that I think is happening now. So I guess we'll end this here. And thank you all so much. And thank you guys for your time and coming out and sharing your experiences. It was a lot of fun.
Anytime.
Yeah.
And it made it a lot better than my regular droning on. It's a lot more fun.
It's always fun to chat about it.
Yeah.
Anytime to anyone.
Awesome. All right. Well, I hope you all have a good night. Do you two want to have like a Teams chat or something to debrief, or you guys just want to head out?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Yep. I'll send you a link and we'll chat in a sec.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.
Thank you.